Whitesburg, if it were to hold on, you're about 30 minutes away from that storm. So as we look up to the north here, we're now getting into a more populated area. Looking at Carrollton, we're seeing the winds really kind of pick up. These are winds that are going towards the radar here in the green, going away from the radar site in the red. Anytime these colors come together in a very kind of a discrete way, that means that you likely probably have some rotation. Is it on the ground? That's what we're always trying to confirm. So when we look at these two warnings together, University of West Georgia, we were talking about you all less than 10 minutes ago. Now you're in that final period of time where you definitely have to be in your safe place. You're definitely already getting some of those heavy rain bands moving in. If you're in Carrollton, it's already raining there. You have 4 minutes before this kind of like really gusty area of wind comes through. The concern is, as this area of wind comes through, is that that's where the rotation may be lodged. Alex, could we possibly zoom in over here? I know the radar is kind of going in and out here. I want to see some of these roads. Mount Zion to Carrollton. For those of you, here's the University of West Georgia right here. Laverne Road right here. Then you also have Double Branches along with Briarwood Estates. These are areas that you're in a warning right now, and you're also in an area of suspicion. We are only getting radar indicated potential tornadic activity. We're not seeing any really good coupling here, but there's some areas once again like Hayes Mill Road going out to Laurel Road, all the way to South Highway 27 up to Chapel Heights Estates that we'll be watching, because these colors are really brightening up at some points in time, all the way down to Laurel Road, where these basically these tornado warnings are starting to overlap each other. But this is for central Carroll County and also southern Carroll County that borders Heard, and it will go until 3 o'clock, and that includes both warnings. Alex, are we getting anything in from the National Weather Service? Are they giving us any idea or indication? Because we're seeing some really high winds. At times we've seen winds that have exceeded some 60 miles an hour. No, so not at this exact moment. We haven't gotten any new information aside from that new tornado warning. But what I did here when I circled what you see on the screen right now in this dark red, I want to emphasize that if you are basically along this line, that's where I think you had a good word, the area of suspicion is. So now if you're behind this line, say we were talking about your road 10 or 15 minutes ago, your imminent tornado threat has come to an end. But as Jonathan's alluding to, I'm going to switch the wind product here, and I'm going to show you some much brighter colors. And this is going to be the type of damaging wind threat that you're going to be able to see get down to the ground. 55, 50, 36, 32, right? So you're still going to have some really strong winds even after that tornado threat comes to an end in your location. Yeah, and that's a really good point that you make, Alex, that these storms, there is a tornado threat here because we're under a tornado warning from Carrollton all the way down to Stony Point, and even Roopville under that particular warning at this moment. However, this shield of rain right here, especially where you see the purples and reds, you're talking about some wicked winds. Alex just measured those winds as well. And we're not far from the radar site, so it is likely that these winds are closer to the surface than not. And you definitely have 50 to 60, 65 mile per hour wind gusts lodged within this line alone. So I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but because we don't see an imminent threat for tornadoes, let's kind of widen this thing out, because it now tells a story that these severe thunderstorm warnings are now reaching a little bit further to the north, areas that are not included in the watch. So we have counties along and to the south of I-20 under a severe thunderstorm watch until 9 o'clock tonight. But as we look up here to Polk County along with Heard County, we're now getting word that there is a severe thunderstorm warning in place, and these storms are moving over central portions of Polk and Heard counties and headed for those of you in Paulding and eventually get into portions of Douglas County. So as we zoom in here just a little bit closer, I do want to alert those of you who are in maybe perhaps the Dallas area that you now have a severe thunderstorm warning until 3:15 just to your west. So that's West Paulding County along with all of Polk County at this point, from Cedartown going out to Rockmart. And then as you get once again into Heard County, you have Buchanan there, Tallapoosa under that warning. And it's all about the winds here. Now, we've also seen some pretty large hail just to the west as these storms were blazing across central and eastern Alabama. Now that they are here, the hail threat is not as pronounced. But once again, about an hour ago, as I was watching the storms, we saw a significant threat for hail. As we take a measurement here, Alex, what are we seeing in terms of hail sizes?
Yeah, it looks to be just about a half inch. If
Just about a half inch. So that would actually be below severe limits. We're talking about penny to dime size hail, or pea-sized hail at best if it's 5 inches. But there could be some larger pockets lodged within. But this event itself comes in the midst of what has been a series of successive rounds of severe weather. The atmosphere is a little bit different today, especially down to the south where temperatures have ran into the 70s. We haven't really had that problem here in Atlanta over the past few minutes or the past few hours. Our temperatures have been stuck in the 60s. Even Gainesville right now pulling at 59 degrees. But as you look down to the south, especially as you get into Troup County, 82 degrees there in LaGrange, 71 in Coweta. Go over to Griffin, still a tad cooler, but if your numbers are in the 70s and certainly into the 80s, you have an atmosphere that's very buoyant, and that when that line moves through, you're going to find some of the fiercest storm activity. So if you are in and around the West Point Lake area, I'm going to have great concern with your neighborhoods over the next few hours. So we do now have new information in. They have dropped the warning that included those of you in the Bowden area going all the way up, or Bowden going all the way into Carrollton. So Carrollton City proper, you're no longer in that warning. That warning still, once again, to the north of the Haralson County area, but also now including, once again, still safely inside, I should say, Carroll County. Stony Point going all the way over to Lowell here. Not seeing a clear debris signature here. But as we ride Highway 5 from Rooteville, you're now out of the warning. This is Highway 5 right here. And let's see what this road is. This is Lowell Road here. So takes you right into Lowell. This will be the small area main intersection in town. Go out Highway 5. Talking about some of these other communities that could be possibly impacted. This is the McIntosh Circle area. Looks like Alcorn Creek Road along with Springer Road. These are the roads that connect to I-5 that basically take you through the southern part of the county and eventually into Whitesburg. At this point, Whitesburg, you are not in the tornado warning. What Alex is pointing out here is a separation of winds, but it's this area, this zone of suspicion, if you will, that we will be watching for some possible, not just rotation, but some straight line wind damage. Something just caught my eye down here. Is this northwest Haralson County? Okay.
I think that's going to be Heard.
Yeah, Heard County. Excuse me. Haralson County is up to the north there. This is Heard County. Georgia Power Road, yellow dirt right here. This is over what I perceive to be maybe a small airport there. I'm going to watch that area. This is Heard County. Central Hatchie, you're right here. As you get into this area, we're going to have to watch this as this storm kind of comes in. This is what I call kind of a county collision, where we have a bunch of counties that come together, and sometimes it's kind of hard to get your bearings straight here, but this actually should be Coweta right there. So this is a zone that we're going to have to watch, where Carroll, Coweta, and Heard all meet over the next few minutes. You saying something, Alex?
Yes, new severe thunderstorm warning that is going to replace what we've been tracking. So notice how big this is now, right? This goes from southern Paulding County, most of Douglas, into South Fulton. These are areas, as you were mentioning earlier, that were purposely not included in the watch, yet here we are, and then going down into Coweta County now. So there goes that old warning that just expired at 2:45. We technically have this tornado warning until 3, but Jonathan, as we were just looking at, that area of mixing of the winds, or lack thereof, has moved out of that polygon. Right? So if your phone went off with the tornado warning, you got the EAS alert, that's very geo-targeted, meaning if you got that, you're probably in the clear from a specific tornado threat, still a damaging wind threat, thus the new severe thunderstorm warning.
And when we talk about the wind orientation here, tornadoes would give you some type of rotating wind. There's some type of twisting, if you will. Whenever you see this kind of bowing effect where literally it looks kind of like an arc on its side, this is indicative of straight line wind damage. And these are the type of winds that cause trees to snap or uprooting, especially if the water has soaked the ground pretty firmly. And so that will be a threat as these storms continue to ride to the east. That will be the most prominent threat as we go through the afternoon. There could be some, okay, so now we do have an indication that they have now allowed that tornado warning to expire.
Yep.
So over the past, what has now been some 30 minutes, we've been tracking a tornado warning that was in effect for Carroll County, mainly central and southern Carroll County. It included areas like Roopville going down to Star Point, and even at points in time, Carrollton. You're now no longer under a tornado warning. All tornado warnings at this point have expired. There were 2 in effect over the past hour during the 2 o'clock hour that were set to go until 3 o'clock, but the National Weather Service has lifted those warnings. So if you are in your safe place, if you took cover, you may come out now. But I would not venture outside, as we have been talking about it for the past now 15 minutes or so since we've been here on air. This is a fairly vigorous and vicious line of storms that we're seeing produce severe wind gusts that are at least over 52 miles an hour. And that will continue to be the case as these storms ride to the east, especially in the areas here shaded in yellow. If you're shaded in yellow, that means that you are under a severe thunderstorm watch. That watch goes until 9 o'clock tonight. If you're under these areas that are in a warning, that stretches as far north right now as the southeasternmost portion of Floyd County into Paulding County. I'm talking about the leading edge of these warnings, pretty much all of Douglas County, going down into Coweta, Douglasville, and Noonan included in this, and they have not at this point put a warning on Troop and Meriwether, but I think that will be shortcoming. What do you think, Alex?
Okay. All right, and Jonathan, we're just getting some information here. If you're planning on traveling today, you might run into some problems. A ground stop has just been put out at Hartsfield, which, of course, if you're unfamiliar with this, it doesn't mean that they hold everything for the moment, but they hold everything at the surrounding airports, right? So if you have a flight at 4 o'clock, your inbound flight might run into some problems with this, particularly if it's coming from the west.
Yeah, coming from Birmingham,
yes.
Memphis,
yeah.
Trying to come down out of Huntsville, even trying to come up out of Montgomery, even for points to the south, because this is a long line of storms. And Joanne and I were tracking it this morning, moving in out of Alabama. It's actually picked up its pace fairly quickly. Alex, I want to do something here.
Yep.
If you would allow us to turn on our temperatures, maybe just the temperatures across the southeast. And this is going to give you an idea of why we're so concerned about certain areas. It's going to be this area really across the southwestern portion of our area that we're most concerned about. In Macon, they're dealing with a temperature of some 80 degrees. You see these hot oranges right here. This is I-85. This is taking you pretty close to I-75, so we'll be watching Spalding County, Henry County, and points to the south, Pike, Lamar included in the bunch, along with Meriwether County over the next 2 to 3 hours as that line comes charging through, because there's still a great concern. We can now get back to the severe elements, namely in forms of the damaging winds. As Alex just mentioned to us, that there is now a ground stop at Hartsville-Jackson, and that is not because it is actually raining or storming on the ground. In terms of those storms reaching the Atlanta metro area or getting close to the perimeter or inside the perimeter, Alex, what do you think we're looking at in terms of timing? We've seen these storms plow along at this point at some 40 to 50 miles an hour. And if they are keeping up pace, there's I-20 right here. So for those of you in Villa Rica, still getting soft showers there in Dallas, but heavier rain is just back out to your west. So we're going to put a track on this. So if they're moving at about 45 miles an hour, here's what you have. Whitesburg 4 minutes, Villa Rica 5 minutes. Okay, that comports with what we just said and saw. And to Douglasville within the next I say 15 to 18 minutes. For those of you in Campbellton, now we're getting into Fulton County, about 23, 25 minutes into Brookstone and into the South Fulton area. And that's when we'll find that these storms will safely be in the metro area. And that's when, guess what, gets started, the afternoon commute. So through the 4 o'clock hours, if you have plans and they involve being outside, you need to start putting them on pause now or shifting them. If you're out and about, maybe running some errands, going a couple places, this is not the kind of activity that you want to be in, because I do have a feeling that there could be a number of severe thunderstorm warnings that are released with this line of storms, speaking to those straight line winds, but also you have the intermittent threat for potential rotation. And this is still an area of suspicion here as we get over to Whitesburg. I wouldn't rule out something possibly happening here as you close in on Whitesburg. It depends on where you are. They may call this Noonan Highway coming out of Whitesburg. They may call it Noonan Highway going into Whitesburg. They may call it Whitesburg Highway. Just kind of, once again, depends on which direction you're coming from. Here is Highway 5 once again. Main Street right there. Once again, Main Street typically turns into the city that is leading out of or into as you go to the north or to the south. As you get up into Byers Crossroads, I should say, we'll be looking for potential, once again, straight line winds for sure, but there could be some notchiness in terms of what we're seeing on radar that can indicate that we have the potential for some tornadoes to develop. Right. These would be weak tornadoes. The thing about the atmosphere today, we oftentimes talk about a wedge, and if I could give you a good idea of a wedge, that's just a day that's unusually cool. And also with those unusually cool temperatures, you also have a thick layer of cloud cover. You don't have a whole lot of sunshine, and we haven't had a lot of that, especially to the north of the city today. And I will say that while this is scary, if we had sunshine and temperatures were above 70 degrees, this would be a really potentially devastating scenario. The timing of the day makes the difference. This is the warmest part of the day, and if we had sunshine to go along with it, that would definitely change the orientation of these storms. So what Alex has drawn for us here is a circle, and this is a zone that we're going to be looking at over the next, I say, 15 to 20 minutes to see how it reacts. We're seeing kind of a shrinking of the overall line, or what we have coined, at least in this conversation with you this afternoon, as our zone of suspicion. We're going to see how this moves over to the east. As it continues to crawl to the north and to the east, are there some weakening of the winds? Well, yeah, we're seeing that in part now. But as we get closer to 85, getting into the metro area, certainly the extreme portions of South Fulton County, does this hold together. Oftentimes with these severe thunderstorm warnings, there's something that's called a tornado tag, and that's something that we actually see here in the background. You would have to look really closely through your app to see if that's one of the impacts, but it will give us an indication of if the atmosphere or the winds that we're picking up on have the ability to rotate. And I would say for this area, based on the notchiness that we're seeing here in and around Whitesburg, that could still be a concern within the next 20 to 25 minutes as the storm rolls into South Fulton. So what does this mean for those of you down to the south? Okay, in Noonan, Peachtree City, you all at this point are starting to get some of that heavy rain here. Can we look at reflectivity, Alex? Yep. I'm curious to know, okay, you haven't gotten the heavy rain yet. That rain and wind are matching up perfectly here. Alex, you can play with it and go back and forth for a second. Yeah. Where you're getting the strongest winds, you're not worried about that if you are to the east. But if you're in the green here, where we've been tracking those winds, and once again, just to the west of what we've been calling the zone of suspicion, that's where you're getting that heavy rain. So you're out of a tornado warning. It's expired at this point, or been lifted from Carrollton all the way down, following the river there into portions of Heard County as you get into Franklin. But that's where the rain is coming down in sheets.
So, hey, Jonathan, let's do a little meteorology 101 here, something the National Weather Service was talking about that I think is an excellent point. So we were looking at the temperatures earlier, and basically we have a defined line in the area of a wind coming out of the northeast and a wind coming out of the south. And right now, that is right over Coweta County.
Yeah.
It is right there.
Yeah.
So where we are going to be watching most closely is where that switch in the wind direction happens, because that can help spin things up. So follow that in the back of your mind, Coweta and Fayette County, and I pop back up on the radar here, and what you're going to see is that this specific area is getting into that zone now, which can help something develop.
Yes.
So we're not necessarily looking at this saying, oh, flip a coin, maybe it will, maybe it won't. We're looking at it saying, okay, it's moving into something right now that might do something here in the next couple of minutes.
That is like an extra surge of energy. That's a boost. We have winds that are coming in out of the northeast. We always call that the wedge. That's what's got us cloudy and cool for points to the north and to the east of Atlanta, including most of the metro area. But down south, those of you in Meriwether County, Troup County, maybe even southern portions of Fayette County, you've got some sunshine. The same for those of you as you get out into Pike and Lamar, which that will be part of the conversation later into the afternoon. That's where, these little breaks here, and that's the issue, is that you've had breaks. Now, and even just an hour ago, those clouds were not as thick over Troup County. You're now starting to get some of that rain that's moving in out of Alabama. But where you have some sunshine, some areas of concern as we get into likely the 3 o'clock going into the 4 o'clock hour, will be Upson County. Pike, Lamar counties will be concerned about those, and that is why the National Weather Service and the Storm Prediction Center said, okay, we'll issue a severe thunderstorm watch. We'll keep it until 9 o'clock, but the hours of concern for us at this point are really generally going to be between now and about 6:30. I think the line will be all said and done, or at least ran out of steam as it moves over Lake Country, but that won't be until about 6 o'clock tonight. As we look up to the north, Alex is now drawing a circle that includes 575, I-75 to the north and to the west of the city. Paulding County going into Cobb, also including Bartow and Cherokee counties, and a portion that's already getting rain out there in Polk and Rome. This is an area, these storms were said to be severe. They're weakening a bit. However, we're going to have to watch and see how they react to the environment as they move to the north. If anything, this is going to be a pretty potent rainmaker for everybody across the area. As we continue with these bouts of severe weather, Alex was tracking rain last night on Fox 5 News at 10 and to News Edge at 11. We were tracking some softer rain exiting first thing on Good Day Atlanta this morning. The ground is getting quite waterlogged, soggy, soaked. So what does that mean? Well, we could talk about the risk for flooding, flash flooding, and also the risk for river flooding, but keep in mind that days and days of rain is weakening the root systems of trees. And so when you consider that there are winds of a straight line nature impacting the tree canopy that is already dealing with weaker rooting as a result of the rainfall over the past 24 hours, just over the state line, getting into Cherokee County, just to the north of there in Alabama. 2.5 inches, easily 2 inches in portions of extreme southwestern Carroll County, 2 inches into Meriwether, 3 inches 24 hours, folks. This does not include what you got Sunday night going into Monday. This is just what has happened from this point yesterday till now. You're talking about 3 inches of rainfall in portions of Pike County, going out to Butts County, 2.5 inches almost. Atlanta, there was rainfall amounts not as high. But once again, we've had weeks and weeks of this kind of repeatedly. And then in the most recent 2 to 3 day period, we've had a decent amount of rain. And so those trees are not as strong. Those roots are not as strong. And a wind field this large will definitely cause some downed trees, and that will also have a reciprocal effect on the power lines. So at this point, as we basically kind of reset going into the 3 o'clock hour, there are no tornado warnings that are in effect right now across the Fox 5 viewing area. Over the past at this point, 45 minutes, we've been tracking a menacing line of storms that have rolled out of Alabama. They're going at a pretty quick clip of about 35 to 50 miles an hour, depending on what parts you're looking at. But there is still a severe thunderstorm warning in effect, and that goes from the southernmost portion of Paulding County all the way down, and I think I was seeing something just a moment ago that included Troup County, but maybe my eyes are playing a bit of a trick with me. But that includes those of you in Franklin as you get into Heard County, going into Coweta, and these storms are continuing to move fairly quickly to the east. Let's look at some of the cities here. Grantville, 8 minutes for those of you near the Six Flags area. That gets into Cobb County, going into the metro area within the next 21 minutes. This is going to be an afternoon in which you need to stay weather aware. We will have updates as soon as they come in. If there's another tornado warning, we'll break into your coverage, but we will have updates coming up in the news starting at 4 o'clock. Thank you, Alex Forbes, and thank you for staying with us. Stay safe on this very stormy day.